Everyone's been coming out with full doom and gloom relative to Liberation Day and what it would mean for the stock market here in the United States and really around the world. Would Liberation Day set off a chain reaction of trade wars, dragging the United States into a bunch of economic nastiness? I kind of thought that maybe the markets and some of the doomsday people were overreacting a bit. Some of the cryptocurrency, YouTubers. And look at the markets today, finished green. Dow finished up 235, S&P finished up 37, NASDAQ finished up 151 points, just shy of 1%. But I will say this, Trump came out just as the markets closed and laid out his tariff plan. And as of right now, you have a massive sell-off in the futures market. Futures, as of recording this video, at about 2:40 West Coast time, PM, futures are down almost 1,200 points, almost 3%. On the Dow, S&P futures down 225, almost 4%. And NASDAQ is down over 900 points, and that's over 4.5%. Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin selling off about 3.5%. XRP even worse. I saw almost a flash crash when the metals markets opened up at 3 o'clock. It's 3:40 right now, Pacific Coast time, not 2:40. When the metals markets opened up at 3 o'clock PST, there was a flash crash on silver. If any of you guys saw that, silver dropped about almost 4%, immediately dropped about $1.10 an ounce, and then immediately bounced back to about 37 cents down. Gold dropped about $23 immediately out of the gates, and then quickly reversed and went up $10. Metals are all over the board right now. Interesting that you'd be seeing metals pulling back right now. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow morning? Who knows if these markets are all going to kind of settle out and we get an update tomorrow? I don't know. Maybe I thought that the markets had possibly priced in some of this tariff talk. I thought maybe there was some inside baseball where the markets were, had information that maybe some of us did not have, and that's why the markets went up today. Because I was shocked that you'd see, a relatively green day, not a flat day, but a relatively up day in the stock market, given the uncertainty with what Trump was going to say, when the markets closed. So let me share with you what Liberation Day meant for the Trump administration relative to the tariffs. The markets going into it, it was all over the board in terms of what the final decision would be, or would it be reciprocal tariffs? Would they be full reciprocal or not? So here's what Trump did. And he basically brought out during the press conference, I caught some of it, a bunch of pre-printed charts where he showed what the tariffs are that all these countries around the world are imposing on the United States, and what the United States would be now imposing as reciprocal tariffs, if you will. But here's what some of the specifics out of the Zero Hedge article just a few minutes ago. China, 34% tariff. Now, that's on top of the current 20% tariff, meaning there is going to be a 54% tariff imposed on China now, cumulatively, starting, I believe, it's either April 5th or April 9th. So, folks, for all those goods coming in from Temu and all the other places that Americans shop for all these inexpensive goods, you're going to see, not an expert opinion, I'm not an economist, you're going to see price increases on that. You're not going to see increase in quality, you're going to see an increase in price. The EU, 20% tariff. Japan, 24%. United Kingdom, 10%. South Korea, 25%. Thailand, 36% tariff. Switzerland, 31% tariff. Taiwan, 32% tariff. Malaysia, 24%. So you've got some pretty hefty tariffs on some of these countries. I did see an email come out yesterday from my auto dealership that said that they were going to, that the product already in the dealerships obviously would not increase in price, but anything in the pipeline and thereafter would be subject to price increases depending on what happened with today's tariff news. And like I just said, EU, if it's European, Porsche, BMW, some of the EU country, German cars, potentially 20%. Again, that's going to be in some fashion, maybe not dollar for dollar, percent for percent, but it's going to be carried through and passed off to consumers, okay? You're just not going to have Porsche building their cars in the United States. You're not going to have Ferrari building their cars in the United States. You're not going to have, some of these Japanese automakers, and South Korean automakers, building their cars 100% in the United States. Just not going to happen. So again, they're going to be passing off a good portion of this in terms of price increases to the consumers. It says here are some of the hardest hit nations: Iraq, 39%. Mauritius, 40%, Syria, 41%, Falkland Islands, 41%, Vietnam, 46%. A lot of clothing, a lot of textiles are made in Vietnam that come to the United States. Madagascar, 47%, Laos, 48%, Cambodia, 49%, same thing, textiles and clothing. Lesotho, 50%, and St. Pierre, 50%. So Mexico and Canada are not on the list. Will continue to exempt USMCA compliant goods. And there are current existing fentanyl migration orders that remain, in effect. A couple things were exempted from the tariffs, including steel, aluminum articles, and auto parts already subject to Section 232 tariffs. When I was talking about auto dealerships, let me back up. EU tariff is 20% and Japan 24%. I misspoke. The auto tariffs of 25% were already implemented, okay? So you have auto tariffs that are specifically already in place for 25%. So that's going to take precedent over general 20% EU tariffs on, for example, the EU, or EU tariffs and 24% tariffs on Japan, okay? So we also have exempt copper, pharmaceutical, semiconductors, and lumber, and bullion. Bullion, gold and silver bullion, and potentially other bullion, is exempt from the tariffs, as well as energy or other certain minerals that are not available in the United States. Says initially markets heard Trump's comments as better than expected, and the future spiked on the news, but then as he showed the chart of specific tariffs, futures plunged. So guys, last week's video, Run for the Hills, if you saw it, I discussed, the unknown and how bad this could get and whether it made some sense to take some chips off the table. If you did not do so and you're heavy in the markets and you're heavily invested on the long side, you're not protected to the downside, you could be in for a bumpy ride until this all settles out, all right? As well as with cryptocurrencies, and other asset classes. I can't tell right now on what's going to happen with gold and silver. You would think that there'd be a flight to gold and silver, but possibly the exemption of bullion from the tariffs. There's been a lot of metal moving from EU or from England and Switzerland to the United States recently because there was some concern that the gold and silver would be subject to tariffs, and it's now been exempted. So again, leave me your thoughts and comments. Possibly that's why you're seeing metals pull back, because it's not gold and silver, according to what I'm seeing on the Zero Hedge article. Bullion will not be, and I don't think jewelry is included, but bullion itself will be exempt from tariffs. So a lot happening, and let's just watch and see. For a lot of people who are just struggling day to day to put food on the table, pay their electric bill, and pay their auto insurance and their medical insurance, this stuff it doesn't really interest you probably, nor does it pertain to you because you're not in these markets. However, as discussed before, your bosses are, or your boss's bosses, or others that you rely on for a paycheck or for your livelihood. And these folks, the ones that employ many thousands, are going to potentially take a big hit in this market. Okay, some will see blood in the streets as a buying opportunity. If you're one of those, I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments with regard to stocks and cryptos, maybe even precious metals. So leave it there today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting the channel. Stay safe, everybody. Just do your best. Work on your personal situation, whatever that is. Okay, if it's not the stock market and shoring up investments, maybe it's just paying off debt, working on your credit score, and hunkering down. All right, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. We just gotta let everything play out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting, subscribing. Talk to you soon. Bye.